Yoga is skills in action. But what does that actually mean? Let's try to unpack this a little bit. What I give you here is what comes to me with the source of inspiration. And I will ask you to open up so you can use this version as inspiration, but you can also use the original sentence, yoga skills in action, as inspiration, and then you open up to what that means to you. So as I see it, there are several dimensions to this, and this sentence or this phrase, yoga skills in action, comes from the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the oldest texts on yoga. And one dimension, we can say, is that philosophy should not just be an intellectual activity. We are not doing the full version of yoga if we only read philosophy, if we only study philosophy with our mind, even if we can remember all the verses. That's not the full version. So what we need to do is to integrate the knowledge into our system to the degree where we start living it. So where we take inspiration from philosophy and act it out in our everyday life. So that can be one dimension of skills, yoga as skills in action. We can also say that when we do yoga, we practice drawing the awareness inwards, going into meditation. But then the full version of yoga is to, if you, for example, cultivate the feeling of love in your meditation, who does it help if you are very good at that, but you can't really be love in the real world, or if you can't really feel happy in the real world? So yoga as skills in action is to take that which you cultivate in your meditative experience. That it can be that you have cultivated a certain atmosphere of feeling, and then you bring it into your everyday life. And yes, that is challenging. And maybe that's exactly why we are riding this war wagon. We are challenged. We are challenged to practice cultivating the feeling and the attitude and the choice of love and awareness also in our practical life, also when obstacles pop up in our everyday life. And of course we can say that the first step towards being able to do that would be just to draw in meditation, and if you can do it there, if you can cultivate the feeling of love at a person you are perhaps super angry at in your everyday life, if you can cultivate that feeling in your meditation, that can be step number one. So it's for sure better than if you are just pissed at that person the entire time. But then the more expansion version of this practice will be if you can also do it when you're not in meditation. And the more challenging version is to do it when you're then together with that person who is challenging you. And now this is just an example. Then we have another dimension of yoga as skills in action. And that is, again, as yogis, we train to draw inwards, and we train ourselves to open up to the field of awareness, open up to the greater self, the connection with the greater self. So let's say I do that, and then I get inspired. I feel all of a sudden I know something. All of a sudden I have a vision of how the world should be or how the world actually is. Then my task as a yogi who practices skills in action is to take this vision or this knowledge that I have attained in my meditative state, and when I'm not in meditation, I use it as something that I am moving towards. And it's actually the same, like if you cultivated love in your meditation, then when you're in your everyday life, this is kind of like the goal that you want to move towards. If you have a vision of how the ideal world is, then you go into your everyday life and you take the steps, the practical skills, you study how is this possible to move in this direction in the physical reality. So our yoga practice does not just become some fluffy idea world or vision world, but the vision world, we go into that to take the vision world into our physical world, so we can study and we can work hard and we can move through the challenges it takes in order to make or to go towards that which we have seen or that which we have realized inside of ourselves. And as said earlier, this is not easy. This is hardcore yoga. And all of the time we need to also be aware of our inspiration, that the inspiration comes from something which is not physical. So there is not always a direct translation into this world. Sometimes we are the ones who need to do that translation. So we become the binding point between, we can say, heaven and earth, we can say philosophy and practical living, we can say ideas and the lived life. And the Bhagavad Gita is actually the story of Arjuna, who is a warrior, and he is riding a warrior's wagon. And who is controlling that wagon? That's Krishna. And Krishna is God, or Krishna is the higher consciousness. You can say in a more everyday language that Krishna is the part of you who is extremely wise, the wisest part of you, the smartest part of you, the one who is detached from all the emotions and everyday life complications that you are entangled in, the one who has the clear perspective. And sometimes when we're in meditation, we tap into this awareness where we can see stuff more clearly. And that's exactly why it's easier to do when we draw in, when we close our eyes from everything that's going on around us. So we tap in to the wiser part. And then, of course, we have an animal who is pulling the wagon. So Arjuna, who is riding the wagon, who is riding life, is in a wagon that's controlled by the higher dimension. And then there is the animal self that's pulling. So Arjuna, or you, me, us, we are in between the wise version of ourselves that's connected to the greater picture, the greater whole, and the animal aspect of ourselves who is controlled by instinct and emotion, and the most primal aspects of being a human being. So again, yoga is about being the binding point between the higher dimension and we can say the lower dimension, or we can say the smarter self, the animal-like self. We can say heaven and earth, God consciousness, and human being consciousness. Yoga is skills in action. Yoga is to tap in to your potential. Be aware of where you would like to go, what world you would like to live in and take part of, and then move towards that goal, towards that ideal world by doing the hard work it takes to build it, to study the structures of how to get there, to do the hard work it takes to get there, to face the challenges it takes to get there. Yoga is not just about downloading ideas. It's not just about hiding in a cave to experience enlightenment, but to go into that side of yourself, that part of yourself where you are getting enlightened. And then you don't just stay there. You take action. You bring what you have learned in contact with the higher aspects of you and higher consciousness, and then you work to make it happen. You, in your meditative state, maybe experience bliss. Then you move into your real world. What most likely happens is, it's not that easy to keep that bliss going, but you make your dedication, you take the choice of moving in the direction where bliss can happen. You sit down, you figure out what does it take for you to have that feeling more present in your life. How can you act in order to, without pushing, without going into war with people around you, how can you then inspire them more in that direction of the bliss you have felt or the world you have seen? As I see it, we don't want to fight each other. We want to honor that everyone is exactly where they are in the bigger puzzle, because there is a meaning behind that. There is a lesson to learn, there is wisdom to download, there is work to be done. So we don't want to go into the world and push everyone to see bees and butterflies and big romance opening up. But we stay true to ourselves, connected to our core, and serve as the source, or serve as the vehicle of inspiration. Serve as a vehicle where between what we have seen, what we have felt, what we have realized, and then the world around us. So if you start, we take this love and bliss meditation example again. If you have felt that in your meditative state, and you realize this is how the world should be, then you need to take the responsibility, and you need to do the hard work of figuring out what you can do in your practical life to bring more of that feeling into the world. And you need to dedicate yourself to embody the bliss, to embody the love, even when it's tough. And again, in a version where you're not pushing, where you're not fighting, where you're not crossing other people's boundaries, but by you simply standing so strong in yourself, simply embodying love or bliss or the wisdom that you feel connected with so strongly that you know with yourself that this is true. You have experienced this, and you have decided to bring that with you into the world. Then without saying anything, without doing anything where you are, pushing and fighting and pushing, then people will sense that. And it will be, they might wonder, or they might feel inspired by you. And then they realize that this is possible. And thereby you pass on the inspiration. And perhaps, who knows, they will start moving towards it as well. So just take a moment now to close your eyes. Feel your seat, the ground you're seated on. The ground that holds the history, the past, that will hold the present. The ground that embodies all living beings connected to planet Earth. As we have learned in a previous version on the people of Earth, this connection to Earth is connection to everything that has been here. Everything and everyone who is here. And by being connected to Earth and the game that's going on Earth, the rules that work here on Earth, by understanding that, then it will be easier to bring your ideas and visions from the source of inspiration, from the open sky of possibilities, from your connection to the greater whole, into this world. You serve as the bridge, you serve as the vehicle. What does yoga is skills in action mean to you? What is the next practical, real world action that you need to take? in your yoga practice. Just be aware. Note it down for yourself. Make your choice. Make your intention. Thank you for tuning in.